Hey, thank you for joining us for this morning's Word of the Day. Today we're going to be in Ecclesiastes chapter number 3, and this is probably the most famous chapter in the book of Ecclesiastes, all because of a song by a group named the Birds. And as we read it, you're probably going to recognize some of the words, and the song may even jump into your head. But let's start reading verse number 1. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which was planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones together. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. Currently in our culture, we're in a time to refrain from embracing. With the coronavirus, we're told to keep 6 feet apart, so now's the time to not embrace people. Verse number 6, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What the Bible is trying to teach us here is that every one of us have seasons of life that we go through. Some of them are great, where we're happy and we're joyful and we're profitable and we're wealthy and we're healthy and we're in a time of peace, and we love those times. But then there's other times where we're mourning and we're weeping, and we may be in a time of war, maybe spiritual war, or war in relationships, or we're rending instead of sowing, and we're casting things away that we used to gather together. And those are the times we don't like. But as he said in verse number 1, every season of life that we go through, every time we enjoy, the good times, the bad times, there is a purpose for them under heaven. God has a purpose for everything you go through in life. So right now, you may be in a time of success, and a time of happiness, and a time of peace, and a time of joy. Man, that is ordained by God, and that is planned by God for a purpose, and God has given that time to you. You may be in a time of mourning. Maybe you're suffering with physical problems, or spiritual problems, or relational problems, financial problems, whatever problem it is. You're not in a time of joy and happiness and peace. You're in a time of mourning and weeping and sorrow. That time was given to you by God as well for a purpose. God has a purpose for every season of life that we go through. So here's what that means for us today. Whether you're in a good time or a bad time, it's given to you by God. We are to thank God for it. See, a lot of times we enjoy the good times, and then we maybe go through a difficult time, and we long for those times of happiness and joy and peace, and we try to get those back maybe, and we strive to get those back. And Solomon's telling us they'll come again, but the time you're in now, the season you're in now, is given to you by God for a purpose. Then I want to skip down to verse number 11. He hath made everything beautiful in His time. Whatever you're facing, whatever you're going through, whatever you're dealing with today, whether it's good or bad, God will make it beautiful. It's what Romans tells us, where it says there's a purpose, that God uses everything for our good. We love that when everything's going well and everybody's healthy and people are having a great time. Man, this is for God's good and God's glory. But when death comes, or when hurt comes, or when pain comes, we don't see that. But Solomon's reminding us, every time that you go through in life, the good times and the bad times, God makes them beautiful in His time. It's being patient for God. And he continues that thought in verse number 11. Again, he says, He hath made everything beautiful in His time. Also, He hath set the world in their heart. Now, that word world there is the Hebrew word olim, and it literally means eternity. God has placed eternity in the heart of man. Now, what does that mean? That means that as humans, we know there's something bigger out there. There's more than just this life. There's more than just what we have on earth. We don't, we're not born and live 60, 70, 80, 100 years and die and that's it. There's something else waiting for us. There's eternity waiting for us. And as children of God, we know that eternity that's waiting for us is an eternity in paradise with God the Father and with Jesus Christ our Savior, where we get to worship Him forever and fellowship with Him forever. And eventually when all this is over and God recreates the earth and makes everything new and gives us a new heaven and a new earth, we will be just like it was supposed to be in the Garden of Eden, in perfect fellowship with God, in perfect fellowship with each other. Well, there will be no more time for mourning. There'll be no more time for weeping. There'll be no more time for war and hate, but it will all be time for love and joy and peace and happiness. But we have to wait on that. While we're here, we go through good times and bad times. But as believers, we know no matter how good it gets on earth or how bad it gets on earth, it's going to be incredible in eternity. Something great is waiting for us. That's what Solomon's trying to teach us this morning in Ecclesiastes chapter number 3. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I'll see you again tomorrow for our word of the day. I think we're in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 tomorrow. It's going to be a wonderful lesson. Look forward to seeing you. Have a blessed day.